Imagine coming home from work on a normal Tuesday. You open the front door, and your house is completely silent. Most of the furniture is gone. Your spouse is gone. Your children are gone. In almost any other wealthy democracy, this would trigger an immediate kidnapping investigation. In Japan, for the last 80 years, taking your children and vanishing wasn't a crime. It was a legal strategy. The moment a divorce notification was filed at a local office, parental authority collapsed entirely onto a single person. Because the courts rarely disturbed a child's living situation once settled, separation became a literal race to abduct. Japan operated entirely alone on this issue. According to the Justice Ministry, it was the only G7 nation that legally barred joint custody after a divorce. Looking at the data, this system affected more than 200,000 Japanese children every single year. Nearly a third of those kids would eventually lose all contact with their non-custodial parent, erasing that parent entirely from their lives. On April 1, 2026, the Japanese government revised its civil code. For the first time since 1947, divorced parents can legally share custody. On paper, it looks like a massive victory for children's rights and families torn apart by an antiquated law. But days before the law took effect, hundreds of women rallied in the streets of Tokyo. They carried purple banners. They marched to stop the new system from taking effect, holding signs that read, "No to a system that blocks our escape." The very people this progressive human rights reform is theoretically designed to help are fighting desperately to stop it. To understand why, we have to look at how Japan was strong-armed into changing its laws in the first place, and exactly what happens when you force a new legal framework into a system built to suppress it. The 2026 custody reform didn't happen because Japanese lawmakers woke up to a domestic crisis. It happened because international outrage over legally sanctioned child abductions became too loud for Tokyo to ignore. Take the case of Vincent Fichot. He's a French former banker who lived in Japan for over a decade. In August 2018, he came home to find his wife had vanished with their 3-year-old son and 11-month-old daughter. He hasn't seen them since. In July 2021, Fichot set up camp right outside Tokyo's Olympic Stadium. He started a hunger strike that lasted 21 days, hoping to force French President Emmanuel Macron to intervene while he was in town for the opening ceremonies. Fichot's case was highly visible, but it wasn't isolated. The United States State Department formally cited Japan for showing a pattern of non-compliance with the Hague Convention on Child Abduction. Leaders from Italy, Germany, and France directly confronted Japanese prime ministers over their missing citizens. By the summer of 2020, the European Parliament adopted a resolution demanding Tokyo change its legal system to comply with international child protection rules. The overwhelming vote was 686 to 1. Facing immense diplomatic heat, the Japanese Diet passed the revised civil code in May 2024. The law even included a retroactive clause, meaning already divorced parents could petition courts to get their custody rights back. It solved the immediate crisis of international embarrassment. But because this legislation was built as a diplomatic band-aid, it was on a collision course with Japan's domestic reality. Under the new rules, divorcing couples can check a box to choose joint custody. If they disagree, the matter goes to a family court. And that court now has the power to force joint custody based on the child's best interests, even if one parent strongly objects. This introduces a severe problem. Japan's family court mediation system operates on a strict culture of neutrality. Mediators prioritize listening to both sides equally, which means they rarely point out abusive behavior or hold perpetrators accountable for domestic violence. This chart highlights exactly why that neutrality is so dangerous. Japan has a gender wage gap of 22. The protesters marching with purple banners fear that vulnerable women will be financially coerced by mediators into accepting joint custody arrangements with their abusers just to secure child support. Under Japanese law, joint custody requires both parents to agree on major life events. That gives an abusive ex-spouse permanent legal veto power over school enrollment, major medical procedures, and where the mother and child are allowed to live. A policy celebrated globally for protecting family bonds acts domestically as a state-mandated tether. For a survivor of intimate partner violence, joint custody means the court is forcing them to co-parent with their abuser, blocking their only route out. The desperate foreign parents demanding access to their children and the terrified domestic abuse survivors fighting to keep their distance share a tragic common ground. They are both trapped by the exact same broken legal system. Japan's family court system is drastically under-resourced. They suffer from a severe shortage of specialized investigators and family law experts needed to properly evaluate complex domestic disputes. Now, these same overstretched judges have a crushing new mandate. They must accurately evaluate nuanced claims of domestic violence and process a massive surge of retroactive custody petitions, all without substantially new funding or better tools to enforce visitation orders. Even when joint custody is awarded, equal parenting time remains a myth. Japan still uses a primary residence model. One parent handles the day-to-day care, and the non-residential parent's power is largely restricted to major legal decisions, not actual time spent raising the child. As this law rolls out, the real metric of success won't be the text on the page. It will be whether these overwhelmed judges actually use their new powers to grant joint custody over objections, or if they simply default to the old habit of awarding sole custody out of institutional inertia. A sovereign nation can rewrite its civil code overnight to fix a diplomatic crisis, but undoing 80 years of entrenched bureaucracy, financial inequality, and a culture that tolerated child abduction takes a lot more than a signature. Changing that reality takes an entire generation.